The following is a presentation of KSL Sports. First and 12. A total roundup of BYU and Utah football and the expanded Big 12 Conference. Brought to you by Macy's Grocery Stores. Your hosts are Mitch Harper and Alex Kirry on KSL News Radio and the KSL Sports Zone.
Hour number 2 of the program. Thanks for being with us. It is First and 12. Alex Kirry, Mitch Harper. Thanks for being with us on the program. Mitch, of course, hosts every week Cougar Nation, which, I don't know, has the win streak brought more people out, or is there some superstitious stuff going on, Mitch? How are the BYU fans reacting over the phones to the win streak so far? Are you getting a lot more folks who are getting out there and getting – I find that it brings out a lot of pessimistic optimism, but it also brings out a lot of like people who are like, "Told you," and you're like, "Okay, come on." You can't be everybody's uncle who thought BYU was going to go 12-0 this year. But I just wonder how Cougar Nation takes it during your weekly show, man.
They are very pessimistic, but one thing I have learned with the phone lines the last 2 seasons is that negativity always seems to blow up the phone lines, and there hasn't been much to be negative about, so it's been a little more calm as far as like just pretty much positive takes, and it hasn't been anything controversial, whereas last year 37-7 loss to West Virginia. We're backed up, and people are just wanting to sound off and fire everyone. Whereas that take, like, what do you really nitpick right now? You can't nitpick them much. They're pretty healthy. They're taking care of the ball, and there's so much to like. And it almost feels like some people are like, well, everything that I want is happening. I don't know what else to say other than go Cougs. And so it's been a lot of that. And
flip it to
it's been fun, though.
2 things. You can flip it to full rivalry mode. You can flip it to full rivalry talk, or change the name of the show to Ute Nation. You'll get that negativity vibe going on. It's fine. If you start getting. Speaking of the fire, I mean, I told you I went on X just because I was like, all right, I got to see how Utah fans are figuring this thing out, and the amount of like, no, you're an idiot, like among their own fans, like, no, you're an idiot, no, you're an idiot, and it's like, no, you think you know what you're doing, like, and I thought, oh my goodness, we've seen this before, but Utah deals with it so little, right? Like, I mean, the honest truth is that they do not deal with this that often, and it did not help yesterday. Let's kick off the second hour here with the Utah versus Houston game breakdown. This is where the meltdown continues for Utah and the fans who are surrounding this program that's been so successful for such a long stint of time. A 4-game losing streak is an absolute foreign territory for people here locally. So let's jump in here. It's your Utah game breakdown right now.
The Utah Utes post-game analysis.
Mitch, another head scratcher for Utah fans. I think that a lot of folks were going into this game saying, I don't feel good about this one. And you know what? I could see them losing this game. And I thought, there's no way. If there's a team you can get right with, because I get it. Look, TCU, that's a team that can be that is, like I said, a little bit schizophrenic with their quarterback Josh Hoover, who has success. I mean, the guy has a proven arm that can beat teams some week, and then other teams or other weeks can absolutely lose it for his own team. But you see the talent there, and TCU's got athletes. Houston's got athletes, but they just do not have it all together yet. And this is a program that everybody looked at coming in and did not think that they were going to be able to do much this year in conference. And frankly, I don't think any of us saw them getting a win over TCU. And then certainly the biggest shock of all is Utah losing their 4th game in a row. Down in Houston now against the Houston Cougars, they only put up 14 points. Isaac Wilson gets pulled after he's not able to manufacture more than just the 1 touchdown. The defense was trying its darndest, Mitch. It looked like they were really fighting this thing. That last interception just absolutely handed the game over. A 43-yard field goal. I thought, okay, maybe just send this thing to overtime. This team, the Houston, has no idea how to punch this thing in from 10 yards out. There's no way they're going to score on the Utes inside that overtime, but they got that pick and they got the field goal, and Utah's woes got even deeper this weekend down in Houston.
It did, and I really did not even entertain the idea of Utah losing this game. Coming in, I really thought this was the get-right spot just because I don't put much stock at all into Houston, and I thought once again a change of the offensive coordinator spot it wouldn't be great long term for the rest of the season. But I thought for 1 week there'll be an uptick in production, and initially there was with some of those early scripted plays with Keithy popping off a big 70-yard touchdown. But after that, it was all downhill. And what's interesting, when you brought up earlier that Utah is not used to this, you're right. The last time I can remember Utah going on a losing streak like this was 2013. They had a 5-game losing streak in that one. That was year 3 in the Pac-12. But what was different then was you knew Utah was building in a transition, and they were still competitive. And you felt like, okay, they've gotten competitive in some of these games, and like long term, this is going to get really good. Whereas this situation feels like it's almost kind of like an end of an era in a way. It feels like. Now, you thought that a couple of years ago when they had some losses, and then they worked their way back into the Pac-12 title game, and look what happened. But this feels different, where Utah can't score. They can't really do anything right. The defense is doing everything they can, but they don't have the depth that we once thought they did. There's a lot of questions about Utah right now, and most notably at the quarterback spot. I thought coming into this year, Cam Rising or not, I thought the quarterback depth at Utah was the best it's ever been, and I was wrong. Isaac Wilson, I still think he's got a ton of talent, and I think he can be a heck of a player, but I understand the move to maybe make a switch to get that spark. Brandon Rose, though, looked like a liability, and I don't know how you win a football game in a power conference with him. I mean, he played it was a tough spot for him to go into, but Utah lost a game where the opposing quarterback, Zian Chris, was 6 of 13 for 61 yards. They lost to a quarterback with that stat line.
Yeah. Well, and more importantly, from the rush, then you go, okay, so then how'd they lose this game? Well, they gave up 230 yards on the ground. Yeah. There were a lot of times where it didn't feel like they were stopping anybody. And on the flip side, Utah doesn't even run for a total of 100 yards. They get to 90 yards on the day. Mekhi Bernard, who had been having week-on-week success, even looked like he was just not everybody was flat. I mean, that's a guy who we talk with every week on our program with JJ and Alex, and you know what? He was absolutely, I mean, the way he put it, it was a shock, and he was devastated by Andy Ludwig being let go. That was his guy, right? And then it was like, okay, so what have you talked about with Coach Bajakian on what you guys are going to do? He goes, and this is on Tuesday, but he said, I'm going to be honest, I haven't had a personal conversation with him. We had a team meeting. It was a very desperate thing. And then on that same Tuesday, it was, okay, well, so what have you seen on film with this Houston team? I'm going to be honest, we haven't gotten into the film really that much yet because we've been just talking about execution of things we need to get better, and if we get ourselves right, we should be able to be good. It was despair on Tuesday, a couple of days after Andy Ludwig had resigned from the program, and that program's reeling. And when you saw Bajakian say, the system's the system, I think I looked at that and I went, oh, boy, that's not a good sign. I was hoping he was going to say, I got some real crazy plans here. I'm gonna blow this thing out. We got a lot of talent. Let's try some new stuff here and get this thing going. And Isaac Wilson, we're gonna cater his strengths. They said that, and then they didn't do anything to cater to his strengths. So it all looked the same, and that's the part I think that was very disheartening for Utah fans, is to watch this thing. Utah goes for 300 yards of total offense. They hold Houston to 289 yards of total offense, but they still lose this game. It was just an ugly one, too. The two teams can't even combine. They don't even combine for 600 yards total as the two groups together. And that's a bad spot because that usually you can count on Utah's defense, and they have given up a lot of rushing yards this season, and it is so unlike Morgan Scalley's guys. And I know it's a lot of young dudes, but, man, they have a lot to figure out.
And I think what's surprising, too, Alex, is, Kyle Whittingham historically would probably love a 17-14 game, and more times than not, I'd always pick Utah to win those games. I think what's been noteworthy here in this 4-game losing streak is they've kind of lost that confidence that when things are against the wall, they're against the ropes in the fourth quarter, they're going to have that confidence to pull it out. I'm not seeing that. It feels like they're getting a little bit nervous. They're getting tight. I mean, that pick late from Brandon Rose to really get the drive to give possession to Houston, it just feels like Utah is getting nervous in the moment, whereas that was always kind of a calling card of these Kyle Whittingham teams when they were in the Pac-12 and building it up in the Mountain West was that, yeah, you might have a rock fight game. That's fine for Kyle Whittingham. They're always going to find a way to win these games. I don't want to go to the extreme and say this is a low point in Kyle Whittingham's coaching career, but it's kind of in that same breath of back in his early coaching tenure at Utah in 2007 when they lost to UNLV 27-0, and that was a real turning point for his program to the point where now they become an annual, national conversation piece in college football. This feels like it's near that. I don't want to put it near that level, but I just, you and I following the Big 12, knowing what Houston has been the last year and a half, they've been a mess, and they have not held their heads high over much. And even when Willie Fritz is coming out and saying his team didn't play that great and they still won, like you would have thought if Houston's going to win this game, they had to play a perfect game. Even against this Utah team that's struggling, that wasn't the case, and I think that's what's concerning too in this.
Yeah, and they do the interview in the game after the game with Houston's kicker, and he's like, "Yeah, man, that's fun. Like I haven't made a winning kick in my entire career. I've had a long career too." And you're like, "Geez, stop saying all these things to make Utah feel worse." Willie Fritz is like, "We didn't play very good. We still beat Utah, man." And the kicker's like, "I never make field goals to win games. This is fun." It's like, dude, this is awful to hear. And wondering if it's whether or not it's the low point right now in the career for Kyle Whittingham and his overall career that's been phenomenal. I mean, they're going to put the statue up, at Utah for Kyle Whittingham when it's all said and done. The thing is that the way people are reacting right now, you and I forget because we have a longer view historically of how these teams have done here locally, but you forget that fans year to year, like this is unacceptable. They're like, this is the worst ever. You got to fire this guy, get rid of him. He's old news. He's not good anymore. He didn't have it. And I'm like, man, how people forget, but at the same time, the results aren't good, and to the point that you go, this is the truck stop conference that we were just supposed to hang out in for a minute before we got the big invite. Well, now fans are feeling absolutely desperate, and Utah is reeling. And now they go to the bye week, and then they welcome BYU up to Salt Lake. And I'm going to be honest, I was going back and forth with a couple fans on Twitter that are Utah fans. They go, "We lose this game 49-0." That was the actual quote that a guy told me. Utah loses this game 49-0. It feels like that Oregon game from last year already before it's even happened. And I thought, wow, that's not a good place for fans to be in right now for that game. And again, we're going to have a lot to talk about with that, but man, it's crazy.
Yeah, and I think it's definitely, I don't know if I'd say 49-0, but it's definitely possible that BYU could blow out Utah. Now, we've seen some underwhelming quarterbacks take down BYU. John Hayes, T.D. Croshaw, Brett Ratliff. Like, it's happened. But what's interesting, too, about Utah is just that I just don't know what they hang their hat on going forward. And you really thought Isaac Wilson, despite the losing, that he was going to give you these brilliant flashes that made you feel like, you know what, maybe this year wasn't the year you hoped, but, man, this is going to be the future. And that even took a hit on Saturday night when he gets benched in favor of Brandon Rose. And I'm a believer in Wilson. I still think he's going to be a really good player, but I think that and the losing, it's just got Utah fans feeling down and out right now. And look, I still think Utah is the type of team that at home could knock off an Iowa State and knock off a BYU maybe, but I don't know how though, because they can't score enough points and the defense can only do so much. You can't win games 7-3 every week, because that's what's kind of feeling like the territory, what it needs to be if Utah's going to win football games at this point.
Well, it's desperation at this point. But man, I also had like some BYU fans going, "Hey, Isaac Wilson, Aaron Roderick will develop you at BYU, man. Why don't you come over?" I've seen all of it. So, and then you have Utah fans going, "Yeah, go to BYU, dude. You're not even that good." I'm telling you, it brings out the weirdest in fans. So there's a lot going on, and there's a lot to talk about running up to that rivalry game, and we'll, of course, spend a ton of time on that going in the next couple of weeks here. All right, let's take a break. We'll come back. Let's listen to Kalani Sitake and his win over the UCF Knights down in Florida. He's now 3-1 in his wife's home state. So there you go. Kalani, the 2 time zone travel, not a problem. We'll jump in with Kalani next right here. It's 97.5 the KSL Sports Zone. It is 102.7 FM. It's KSL News Radio right here every Sunday. Mitch Harper, Alex Kirry will be right back.
Today's just the start of the Big 12 and Power 5 talk to come. Listen to JJ and Alex Monday on your drive home. Afternoons from 3 to 6 on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Welcome back. It is 1st and 12. Happy Sunday morning to you. Less than an hour away from BYU in their AP ranking coming out for week number 9 of college football. BYU 8-0 on the season. Utah, of course, falls to 4-4 on the year as well. We just heard the game breakdown of that in the last segment. Coming up, we're going to have our power rankings. All of the show brought to you today by, of course, the folks at Macy's Grocery Store. Get the freshest fruits and vegetables from local farms and your local favorite brands. Macy's, happy shopping. Mitch Harper, Alex Kirry. Mitch, my goodness, lots going on in the postgame. Of course, you were in the room. Kalani Sitake kicking off the press conference in the postgame after their win over UCF, 37-24 down in Orlando. Business as usual for Kalani and company.
Really happy with the team. I think all 3 phases are doing some really good things. I think we got it a little interesting at the end there, but glad the guys. I mean, they're good, valuable reps for us to understand the situation and play some good, valuable reps for us to learn from. But overall game, happy with all 3 phases. Like to see us take care of the football a little bit better. I think we really lucked out when LJ fumbled and he was able to get the ball back. I don't know how he did it. I got to watch the film, but the turnovers matter, and I'm glad the defense was able to force a couple. But it's a tough team, man. You know, when we play assignment sound football, I think we can do some really good things on defense and special teams and offense. I like to be a little bit more efficient, but man, I can't be too picky when you get the win here and you're on the road, and we traveled time zones to get here. So really excited about the leadership on this team, the belief and the love that they have for each other. We're going to keep rolling. Really, really proud of the fans that showed up, and it was amazing to have all our fans here and see that much of Royal Blue. It was so cool. And so I wanted to just tell the fans thank you so much for being there. And I know my in-laws were part of that, so that was a lot of fun. But good to be in Florida and to get this win and feel really good about the performance. Now looking forward to getting better and getting to the next one, but learning some lessons from this, and wish UCF a lot of the best. And in the future, I mean, they have some really good players. I can see what they have so many different guys that can use. So I know that Gus will get his guys rolling. But I mean, I thought. We knew that it was going to be tough, but I thought that it was going to take our best and be a little bit more disciplined. I don't know what the penalties were, but I know we gave up some offside stuff like that we shouldn't be doing, false start and all that. So we'll clean it up and get ready for the next one. But really excited that we got this win. So what questions do you guys have for me?
Coach, you had a big-time drive at the end of the first half. It seemed like momentum was kind of shifting towards UCF. They would have had the ball at half and had a chance to make it a tie game. But instead, you guys go down the field, score a touchdown, make it 24-10 for half. Let's talk about that possession. Yeah,
I can't remember. Do you remember how much time we had going into that last drive? Maybe
59 seconds.
So just right about a minute. Yeah, I mean, we practice those situations all the time. So it was nice to see us do that a couple weeks ago and get the win. It was nice to see us, do that again in the end of the half and kind of just get some points and make it. I think became a 2-score game after that, and so and then in the second half come out and defense did a good job getting a stop, and I believe we scored the next drive after that on offense. So I just complimentary football. The guys are playing. They understand the game. They understand the situation, and I have to give them a lot of praise for understanding football, and their football IQ has been awesome. It's good to coach smart kids and guys that care and know the type of situation. I mean, if coaches don't have to coach it all the time, the players can coach each other. That makes it a lot easier.
How critical was the start of the game, getting that touchdown, and UCF off the punt and first defensive series?
Yeah, I mean, I think anytime you can start like that, that's good for us, and I think we started on offense first quite a bit the last 3 weeks or so, the last 3 games. And we would have scored on every drive except for I decided to go on 4th down on one of them instead of going to kick the field goal. But I like the momentum. I like the rhythm that the offense is getting into. And I know that we can go fast if we need to, and I know that we can huddle. we wanted to be efficient and make sure that we play efficient football on offense and possess the ball a little bit and just kind of grind it out a little bit. We knew it was going to be a physical game. We wanted to embrace it. So I'm just glad the way the guys responded the right way.
Well, how much did you leverage the fact that UCF was favored to win this game with your guys?
I mean, it's all about, we've said this from the beginning, that we want to prove ourselves right more than anything, but it doesn't hurt to prove some people wrong too. You know, it's a byproduct of doing it right, but that's not our drive. Our drive is that we know, and our focus is we know that we know how good we can be, and I really believe we can play better. That's every week we can keep getting there, and I'm encouraging and challenging the leaders to take over the team, to keep finding ways to improve just a little bit, and if we can put that all together, man, I think we're going to like the result, you know. So week to week, I can say that I think we've improved in a lot of different ways. And the consistency that we're seeing from the offense, I think we were able to run for a lot of yards again. And so it keeps us balanced and it keeps teams guessing. I like that position that we're in with the offense. And I like that the defense is making some plays. We gave up some big plays, but we know the reason why is in the first half, those two big plays were what cost us, gave them 10 points, you know. But even if we're assignment sound, I think we can be better, but we can't give freebies or shoot ourselves in the foot with missed assignments.
There you go, Mitch. You get to hear from Kalani every week, and it's starting to become extremely boring in these post-game press conferences. I know that's by design because it's like, hey, nothing to see here. I don't want to make a big scene out of this thing. We're going to just keep going and doing our thing, and that's exactly what he and his guys are trying to do, coaching staff and players all the same.
Definitely, and it was a weird post-game press conference where it was probably the smallest visiting press conference. UCF's got to level that up as far as up to Big 12 standards. Now, granted, it's a much bigger room than what the number one ranked team in the country, Oregon, they hold the distinction still of the worst visitor press conference room. It was just a simple little white tent, but
Oregon's got the open press box too that I'm confused by always. Where I'm like, it's freezing up here, bro. Close the window.
That blows me away how they still have that. But UCF, it was a different post game press conference. Like basically, Kalani had to crawl over to me to get to the podium. It was so tight and uncomfortable that I wasn't a fan of that. But yeah, Kalani kept it vanilla. And you know what? If you're 8-0, you have the right to, I guess, be vanilla. I guess I'd like a little more pop to some of those quotes. But hey, what he's doing right now is working for this team, and Cougs move on, and they head into the bye week with a lot of momentum.
Yeah, you think these guys are going to be motivated going up to Salt Lake City? They're going to have 2 weeks to basically. They smell blood in the water. They know that they have dialed up what their program is. They know exactly what they're going to have to do to get wins. And, man, I'll tell you, it's been a weird ride this year because we just have not been used to it. And the power rankings coming up in the program are going to reflect the very, very weird nature of what we thought was going to happen versus what's happening here locally as well and across the Big 12. Mitch and I jump into that next. It's our Week 9 power rankings of the Big 12. Stay right here with us. It's First and 12. 97.5 the KSL Sports Zone and KSL News Radio. Stay with us.
The following is a presentation of KSL Sports. First and 12. A total roundup of BYU and Utah football and the expanded Big 12 Conference. Brought to you by Macy's Grocery Stores. Your hosts are Mitch Harper and Alex Kirry on KSL News Radio and the KSL Sports Zone.
Oh, one of my favorite parts of the week. Every week on First and 12, Mitch Harper and I dive in. We tend to, listen, we're kind of one mind on the rankings. It's been a few weeks since we fought over anything. I think that at some point we just go, yeah, you know what, throw it in there. It's like you know what's going on at the top, you know what's going on at the bottom. And I think last week was a very, very, very average middle of the conference. You're starting to see a little bit more separation. Some teams that you're going, okay, they're showing me something here. So let's jump in here. Eric, fire it up. Let's get to our power rankings. It's one of our favorites.
The Big 12 Power Rankings. A weekly rank of all 16 programs, from the elite to the bottom dwellers.
Mitch, roll it out here for us. I think the top is pretty well set. I'm sure you'd have some people in Iowa that would maybe disagree with you, but until proven otherwise, my goodness, our power rankings stay quite the same at the very top.
Number 1, BYU, and I think there's a great tiebreaker between comparative outcomes with how BYU performed against UCF on the road and how Iowa State struggled with UCF at home. If you want to, split hairs between these two undefeateds, I think that's a nice differentiator between the two resumes right now. Iowa State at number 2, and then the top 4 stays the same. Kansas State at 3 and Colorado at 4. Those are your title contenders right now in the Big 12 Conference as we head into the final months of the season.
It's really wild, too, because Kansas State held serve against Kansas. How many years in a row have they beaten Kansas now? I think it's like 15,
16.
right? 16, 15?
16.
Wow. Okay. Embarrassing. That's not a rivalry right there. That's not a sum. That's why it's Farmageddon between Iowa State and Kansas State, Kansas. You can't have nice things if you can't beat your in-state rivals in anything but basketball. So, yeah, BYU, Iowa State, Kansas State, Colorado. And you could make an argument that, hey, Kansas State did not show up against a bad Kansas team. Colorado just continues to take care of business. But there's that glimmer of I don't believe it. And, by the way, Kansas State has the edge in that one because they beat Colorado, of course, a couple of weeks ago. So that's your top 4, as you mentioned. And then it gets a little bit weird. Cincinnati's 5. I think we kept them there almost by default, right, where it's like, okay, yeah, you lost this week and you lost to Colorado and you were 5-2. Now you're 5-3, and everybody else is kind of around that area in terms of records. West Virginia's 4-4, but roll out the 4 losses that West Virginia has this year.
West Virginia has lost to Penn State, undefeated. Pitt, a rival, undefeated. Iowa State, undefeated.
Jeez.
And Kansas State, 1 loss. So you're talking about
what is that? 24-1 that they're facing off of, basically. Those are the teams. They have 4 losses, and they're to teams that are 24-1 on the season. That's an insanely difficult schedule.
All ranked and all really good football teams that they've lost to. So West Virginia, and the fact that they had their backup quarterback step in and pretty much dominate to the point where I kind of thought, Garrett Green, the injured quarterback, he's a great runner and he's fantastic in that space, but Martial is the better passer. He's more accurate. And I've always felt like if West Virginia had an accurate passer, maybe they could be something that's maybe contending for Big 12 titles. I don't expect that right now, but I think maybe they could play spoiler a little bit down the stretch.
So then, like I said, it gets really weird because Baylor beat of course, Baylor gets the win over a bad Oklahoma State team, but they're 4-4 in the season. But, of course, they're winning, and so what are you going to say? Now, I feel bad because we kind of dinged the Sun Devils this week. The Arizona State Sun Devils, number 8 in the conference. We actually – We lowered them down the list there, and it's not because they just had a bye. It's because some of the teams that won, I still also have a little bit of a feeling that Arizona State is not quite turning that corner all the way. They're 5-3 on the season, but they did not play this week, and so there you go. TCU starts to climb up the rankings a little bit after wins over Utah, and then a comeback win against Texas Tech, and the Red Raiders find themselves a weird spot here, number 10 in the power rankings. UCF is 11, and you could even make an argument that they could go further down the list because they've now lost, 5 in a row? That's a team that is beyond reeling at this point. But you could tell where the talent is. But, again, the teams that are below them are just like a battle of who's going to be awful in this conference right now. Houston at 13. By the way, Houston at 13, congrats. You guys are climbing up the list here, Willie Fritz and his guys. Listen to the last 3 teams in the conference in Big 12 play. This is not like a one-off, like you're usually good, but you had a bad week. Arizona is just absolutely flopping right now. I don't know what's going on down there with Brent Brennan, but it's not good. They're 14th. Utah, 15th. Saved by the grace of Mike Gundy still losing football games, who are now 0-5 in conference. Utah has lost 4 in a row. They're 1-4 in conference play, and so if you can believe it, Utah is 15th BYU is number 1 in the power poll, just the way you had it after week 9 of the college football season, Mitch.
Going into BYU Utah, it's what we expected, just maybe roles reversed.
Reversed, yep. Yeah, it was totally going to be flipped. I mean, that one's I don't think any of us saw that one happening that way. But we're going to take another break here. We'll come back. There's your power rankings, another one in the books right there for you. We'll take a break. We'll come back. We will wrap things up. What's next in the Big 12 next week? Well, we're trying to guess and figure out where this BYU and Utah game is going to be in 2 weeks. But next week, we know exactly what those teams are going to be doing, and that is taking the week off. But the conference still rolls on. Can Texas Tech shock Iowa State? Kansas State, who they're taking on this week to try to stay in that hunt, and all the other teams that are trying to make their way into bowl eligibility or different versions of trying to win this wide-open conference. Stay with us. It is First and 12, 97.5 the KSL Sports Zone and KSL News Radio.
Can't get enough BYU football? Listen to Cougar Nation. Mitch Harper takes your calls Monday nights from 6 to 7 on KSL News Radio. Podcast at kslnewsradio.com.
I know it's a couple weeks away here, Mitch, but we've been speculating on when that BYU-Utah game is going to get played. We have no idea. I guess we won't find out probably either until, I don't know, what's your best guess? A week from today? We'll probably find out. I mean, I would assume just because they'll take the full 6 days or whatever they have now for the TV window. I don't know. Maybe you want to have a little bit more time to plan it all out for everybody who's trying to make that trip out to Salt Lake or whoever they're going to put out there, because I would imagine that's a big game that weekend. You don't have a lot of full-on rivalries that week in college football on the November 9th, but BYU is undefeated. You know they're going to be undefeated going into that game because they don't have a game this weekend, and neither does Utah. It's one of these weeks, too, that's actually super annoying for us locally because BYU, bye week, Utah, bye week. Of course, we talk a lot of Utah State during the week on our respective or on the KSL Sports Zone at least. Bye week for the Aggies, by the way, coming off a big win over Wyoming. That was much needed there in Laramie. So, lots to jump into. Our program is always brought to you by Macy's Grocery Store. What do they do? Well, it's just a perfect combination of getting the freshest fruits and vegetables from local farms and getting your local favorite brands as well. Macy's, happy shopping. Appreciate their support of this program. All right, let's jump in here, Mitch. Let's talk about what this next week here looks like. Texas Tech and Iowa State, that's your first one. I don't know what to think of that game. Does Texas Tech have what it takes to – I mean, look, they have the offense, but they don't have the defense to stop anybody, it seems like.
Texas Tech kind of feels like they're underperforming again, and they look the part. They look amazing. They athletically have all the personnel you feel like should be a top Big 12 team, but they underperform. I would expect Iowa State takes care of business in that one in Ames.
Kansas State goes to Houston. I would think that the Wildcats will go down there and take care of business themselves. They have one job, and that is to win out all the way until they get to Iowa State and to try to get themselves into the Big 12 championship game by making sure they stay perfect at least till they get to there, and then give themselves a shot at that game against Iowa State in what is becoming, hopefully with the matchup of those two teams at the end of the season, one of the best of the year. Arizona and UCF, they go down to Central Florida. Boy, these are two teams that BYU blew out. You didn't think you were going to say that before the first part of the year, but there you go. And
also, I think this is the lock of the century. It's UCF is going to win this one because why? It's a space game. And I forgot to mention, too, it was awesome seeing us.
Come on.
The rocket was awesome. The SpaceX rocket launch during the BYU game, I loved it. It was awesome.
Greg Wrubell had he was going crazy. He was just like, at the very moment that Taase catches the touchdown, the rocket goes off. It was hilarious to listen to. Arizona State goes to Oklahoma State. I mean, this is crazy to think, but Kenny Dillingham and his guys are going to be probably favored in that game. But I could see Oklahoma State going, you know what, we've had enough of this. Let's blow out a team here at home and get things on track. And that could be exactly what happens in that game. I have no doubt that could totally be an outcome in that game.
All eyes will be on the Arizona State kicking situation coming out of that game. That's for sure.
Poor Ian Hershey. The fact that we still know that young man's name is a shocker because he probably won't ever kick again. And then, of course, a game that everybody's lined up as a rivalry game over the years, but I still don't buy it. TCU going to Baylor. The Horned Frogs going to Waco, taking on Dave Aranda and his guys. I don't know who wants this game more between TCU and Baylor. I mean, honestly, TCU's kind of on a roll, but Baylor's sort of finding themselves right now, Mitch.
You were kind of, in jest, kind of tongue-in-cheek about the Sunflower Showdown name. How about this name?
No.
Blue Bonnet Battle?
Buh. Yeah. And I'm telling you, they are like they're not loving that one either. And nobody in the state of Texas is going, oh, yeah, the classic Blue Bonnet Battle. Like, it's just like, come on, man. It's a pretty purple flower. You don't want to be fighting over that thing. And you can't touch it. You can't pick it. Otherwise, you get arrested. That was the threat when I was a kid. You touch those blue bonnet flowers, you'll be tackled into oblivion by the police. Oh yeah, and you know what they are? Weeds on the side of the road. So they're like, don't you dare touch those things. It's like, geez. All right, there you go. That appropriate that's the name of the rivalry. A flower that grows as a weed on the side of the road. TCU going down to Baylor. There you go. Mitch, fun show. I know it wasn't probably fun for you to have to do this thing over the phone, but equally as fun for me. We're able to jam on this thing, and it's fun to be able to break down this insanely crazy Big 12 conference every week, man.
Always a pleasure, Alex, and I wouldn't miss it for the world. And if anyone's, for those that missed any part of the show, subscribe to the podcast. Been seeing great turnout this year on the podcast feed, so go subscribe, and we appreciate all those downloads, and leave that 5-star rating and review as well.
Love it. Our producer is Eric Cabrera. He does a phenomenal job. Eric, thanks for your help, man. And as usual, for Mitch Harper, I'm Alex Kirry. We'll be back again next week for another edition of this Big 12 wrap-up show that we call First and 12. It will be BYU and Utah list, but it will not exclude mention of that game because, of course, then we'll be a week away from the rivalry game. So for Mitch and Eric, I'm Alex. We'll talk to you next time, everybody, right here on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone and KSL News Radio.